Hello, my name is Sandra Lara, and the poet I chose for this presentation is Sherman Alexie. Sherman Alexie is arguably the most widely known Native American poet whose work is most frequently associated with Native American suffering and anger. Sherman Alexie skillfully uses form, rhythm, metaphor, and irony to craft poems that beat like tribal drums, telling tales of suffering transformed through complicated yet loving relationships. Alexie was a Spokane Coeur d'Alene Indian who grew up with an alcoholic father who often disappeared and a mother who worked hard to support 6 children. His solace was the school library where he read every book by age 12. All of these experiences have deeply influenced his writing, but none more than his emotionally unpredictable relationship with his father. Everything he writes about ends up in some way being about his father and who he couldn't be. In the poem Heroes, Alexie employs end rhyme throughout the quatrains to express how some of the grief of a poem speaker suffers after his father's death is turned into a private, loving thrill by fulfilling the father's dying wish of revenge on his mortal enemy. These rhymes beat a steady rhythm throughout the sonnet and give it a song-like quality. The final 2 stanzas of Heroes illustrates how Alexie's humor, darkness, joy, and layers are on full display in this poem. Flew low, maybe 10 feet above the barn, and exploded my father all over the farm. His ashes drifted onto the house and the plows, and settled nicely around 3 dairy cows. Ah, I was grief-stoned and thrilled. My father would live on in his enemy's milk. The use of repetition and metaphor in the poem Chicken, Alexie gradually builds the tension between the speaker's past, in which he was bullied during his tribe's chicken dance, and his present, where his young sons experience joy and love from the same dance. The poem's title is not only a literal reference to the name of the dance, but also a metaphor for cowardice. This rhythm contrasts the speaker's cowardice and selfishness with his wife's loving and hopeful nature. His pessimism finally cracks in the last line of the 6th stanza, but my wife gave my sons an aboriginal chance. In the last stanza, he concludes that his wife's loving persistence has begun to transform the shameful association of the chicken dance into one of joy, love, and pride in their heritage. Your boys saw joy in their uncles and aunts, my wife said, and the pride in your mother's eyes, so be thankful I gave your sons this chance, because they fell in love with the chicken dance. Sherman Alexie has stated that poetry is one of his favorite mediums to write in, and makes comparisons to tribal songs, whether they're short or long. There's a lot of repetition involved, there's a lot of recitation of themes and ideas and sounds. If one looks deeply, one can find shades of optimism in his poetry that explores how earlier suffering can be transformed by complex and loving relationships. It is also evident that Sherman Alexie skillfully uses form, rhythm, metaphor, and irony to craft poems that beat like tribal drums, telling tales of suffering transformed through complicated yet loving relationships. My name is Sandra Lara, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. And the end of this, I will leave you with Sherman Alexie reciting his poem Chicken.
Chicken. My wife wanted to give my sons the chance to see my tribe's powwow with transparent eyes and maybe fall in love with the chicken dance. But I stayed home. They wouldn't hear my crazy rants about the powwow bullies who made me cry. My wife wanted to give my sons the chance to enjoy themselves. Listen, I just can't go with you, I said to my wife, who was unsurprised by my need to spin a different chicken dance. They can hang with their uncles and aunts, I said, and my mother, she'll be so surprised that my sons have been given the chance to powwow. And so my wife and sons drove, sans father, to my res on a Saturday night and spent hours watching the chicken dance. And yes, I remember peeing my pants when I saw the reds of my bully's eyes, but my wife gave my sons an aboriginal chance. Your boys saw joy in their uncles and aunts, my wife said, and the pride in your mother's eyes. So be thankful I gave your sons the chance, because they fell in love with the chicken dance.